Good day everyone, Dr. Polaris here. During the Paleogene, a number of interesting evolutionary developments were taking place across the world's oceans. These bursts in animal diversity centred on two main locations, the ancient Tethys Sea and the waters surrounding the ice-free continent of Antarctica. Much of the evolutionary history that took place around the former was discussed in the previous post on Alter-Earth's Paleogene Oceans, except that is, for the Chistadarons. These possible Stermarchosauromorphs have always been something of an enigma, with aspects of their anatomy, fossil record and classification being difficult to clarify. Basal Chistadarons tended to resemble lizards, while the larger, more derived forms were gharial-like in appearance. On our Earth, these mysterious reptiles survived past the KPG boundary, with the small basal genus Lazarosuchus only dying out during the Miocene in Europe. On Alter-Earth, the situation was initially much the same. However, the larger gharial-like forms have managed to survive into the Holocene. As would be expected, their fossil record is patchy. Post-Eocene, their remains are rare, being limited to Eurasia. As on our Earth, they seem to have died out during the Eocene-Oligocene extinction event in North America. In Asia, they remained riverine piscivores, with only a single genus, Irrawaddysuchus, with two species, surviving in and around the Mekong and Irrawaddy river deltas. The small basal Chistadarons have had a somewhat different history. It appears that primitive forms remained a marginal part of European and North American faunal communities during the Paleogene. Their fossils are exceedingly rare and poorly preserved, aside from a handful of spectacularly preserved specimens of a genus tentatively assigned to Lazarosuchus. These innocuous little animals must have been more widespread than the fossil record suggests, as, by the Middle Eocene, remains of Chistadarons start appearing in North African rocks. Like the European species of Lazarosuchus, these were small and semi-aquatic. Unlike that genus, however, these African forms were shoreline dwellers, hunting for small fish and crustaceans in the shallow tropical waters of the Tethys. By the end of the Eocene, these animals were starting to undergo a wave of diversification. Fossils recovered from the famous Egyptian Fayum sites indicate that two genera of Chistadarons were present. Both were significantly larger than their European ancestors, being between 2 to 3.5 meters long. One genus, Canthocai anticus, was a short-necked generalist carnivore, in many ways resembling a scaled-up Lazarosuchus, but with several adaptations for a more aquatic existence, including a flattened tail and paddle-like limbs. The other genus, Cetiosuchus ophidiocollis, was rather different. Measuring up to 3.5 meters long, this animal was a slender, long-necked and small-headed piscivore, superficially resembling the ancient Hyphalosaurus, only much larger and quite distantly related. Cetiosuchus could easily have been mistaken for a small plesiosaur at first glance. Both of these animals are also pretty different in terms of appearance and ecological niche, suggesting a degree of prior diversification that has not yet been recognised in the fossil record. Together, these genera are the oldest members of the clade Pontoseuchoidea, a diverse group of fully aquatic marine Chistadarons. Their phylogenetic tree is broken up into two major branches, Acanthoglossia and Pelagidracones. DNA analyses carried out on the living forms suggest that these clades diverged during the Middle Eocene, with Canthocai the most basal known member of the former, and Cetiosuchus as the most basal member of the latter. Although relatively small, rare and insignificant during the Paleogene, the Eocene-Oligocene extinction event wiped out a good deal of their competitors, allowing this group to thrive. By the Holocene, Pontoseuchians inhabit all of the world's oceans, giving birth to live young and occupying a wide range of ecological niches, from huge filter-feeding giants to serpentine piscivores. In the southern hemisphere, similar changes were occurring. Fossils recovered from the Paleocene deposits on the South Island of New Zealand have revealed the presence of the most basal anatofocoid monotreme known to science, Y. cantabrii. This beaked semi-aquatic mammal would have been roughly 1 metre long and strongly resembled the familiar platypus from our Earth. Much like the Chistadarons described above, W. cantabrii was a coastal animal, filling an ecological niche similar to that of sea otters. Only known from a single partial specimen consisting of a lower jaw with associated molar teeth, this animal was most likely a hunter of bivalves and crustaceans. Like the monotremes of our world, basal anatofocoids were thought to have originated in and around Australia. However, Australia's fossil record is notoriously poor, so any hope of finding older members of this clade there are unlikely. Phylogenetic studies carried out on this group do indeed place the ancestral forms in Australia, and suggest a diversion point from other monotremes of roughly 80 million years ago. Anatofocoids are also placed outside of Platypoda, being recovered as part of an older clade that also contains the early Cretaceous genus Steropodon. Unlike its platypus relatives of the genus Ornithorhynchus, Y. retained molar teeth at the rear of its jaws as an adult, but it would also have shared many similarities with that genus as well, including a sensitive bill, venomous tarsal spurs in males, and the laying of eggs. Even at this early stage in their evolutionary development, anatofocoids were apparently proficient swimmers, making the seaward journey from Australia to Zealandia during either the late Cretaceous or the early Paleocene, and they would quickly spread to neighbouring landmasses during the Paleogene. Indeed, 2 genera are known from the early Eocene fossil sites on Seymour Island, Antarctica: Rossarhynchus weddelii and Bertodanotherium exilum. The former measured roughly 1.5 metres long and possessed an elongated, square-tipped bill that resembled a shovel. This was likely an adaptation for catching snails, bivalves, and invertebrates dwelling in the sand, making this animal a benthic feeder. The latter genus is known from more complete remains, was smaller at about 1.2 metres long, and had a slender, more pointed bill, suggesting that this animal hunted fish closer to the surface. Both these genera inhabited a cool, temperate shoreline environment alongside vegaviform diving birds, the petrel and skua-like pelagornithids, in addition to marine reptiles and pteranodontian pterosaurs. Contemporary species inhabited southern Chile during this time as well, with anatofocoids gradually travelling up the western coast of South America during the Eocene. A few genera are known from the Middle Eocene of Peru, including Quebradodon acosti, Urbinodiptes perdidensis, and Icarhynchus narvaezi. Something that we are not so clear on is the reproductive abilities of these animals. All modern anatofocoids are highly unusual in that, unlike all other monotremes, they give birth to live young via the use of an independently evolved placenta. When this feature first emerged is uncertain, and it is unclear at present if any of these extinct species were capable of live birth. Anatofocoids continued to expand their range during the Oligocene, eventually colonising coastal North America by the end of the period. It was around this time that the modern clade Anatophocia emerged, to which all living Holocene forms belong. In time, these monotremes would become ever more adapted for an aquatic existence, including the development of larger webbed forelimbs and a refinement of the electroreceptors in their bills in order to locate prey. In all, a good ecological comparison from our world would be the pinnipeds and sea otters, but in overall appearance, anatofocoids more closely resemble early cetaceans, such as Cuchicetus and Rhodocetus. At around the same time and place, there are several semi-aquatic lineages of birds undergoing radiations of their own. The most well-known of these were the rapidly diversifying vegaviforms. Genetic testing carried out on modern members of the group has confirmed their place in Anserimorphae, being relatives of gastornithids and anseriforms. first known from the late Cretaceous of Antarctica. Exactly which ancient birds were true members of this clade has caused extensive debate among ultra-Earth paleontologists. Indeed, it was initially thought that Vegaviformes may be something of a wastebasket into which all south polar semi-aquatic birds may be sorted. With the discovery of ultra-Earth, the picture cleared up somewhat. It has been shown that Vegaviformes are a valid clade after all, but included only 3 Cretaceous genera: Vegavis, Polarornis and Australornis. The identity of the North American marquis remains uncertain, but the genus Neogaornis, sometimes thought to be a Vegaviform, is actually a stem member of Aquornithes, closely related to loons. Without the KPG extinction event, these lineages have continued on into the Paleogene, going from strength to strength in some cases. Vegavis itself gave rise to a family of superficially loon-like small seabirds, native to Antarctica, southern South America and Zealandia. Unlike some of their more derived cousins, these Vegavids were still capable of flight and would appear to have lived a somewhat sea duck-like lifestyle. With dense, heavy bones and numerous skeletal adaptations for wing-assisted underwater diving, Vegavids presaged the ecological niches taken by later Vegaviforms. Although successful in their own time, with 7 genera recovered from fossil sites in New Zealand, Seymour Island and Chile, the group became extinct during the early Oligocene, except for several related lineages in Australia, which took to button quail, wader and duck-like niches. The reasons for this relate to the proliferation of competition from other water birds, including other Vegaviforms. The main culprits were the Polarornithoids and the Carasuloids. The former are either close relatives of or descended from Polarornis, being flightless seabirds akin to the penguins of our world. True penguins as we know them do not exist on Ultra-Earth, as the order Aquornithes is far more limited in diversity and distribution. This group is only represented by rare loon and tropic bird-like forms native to New Zealand, New Caledonia and the Pacific Islands during the Holocene. Without the KPG extinction, most of their niches have been taken by other birds, with Vegaviforms on Ultra-Earth inhabiting roles similar to loons, penguins, cormorants, gannets and kin. Unlike penguins, Polarornithoids were specialised for a form of hind limb assisted swimming, more similar to grebes or hesperornithines of the Northern Hemisphere. This body plan is known from the very oldest definitive Polarornithoids from the La Meseta formation of Seymour Island, dated to the early Eocene. Up to 5 genera inhabited this one area and were already diverse in terms of size. The smallest genus, Sobralornis, of which 3 species are known, was gull-sized, while the largest, Cryodiptes grandis, measured roughly 1.8 metres long. The latter is known from a well-preserved specimen that demonstrates the overall body plan of these birds quite well. The beak was long, narrow and spear-like, set atop an elongated neck, while the forelimbs were rather short and stubby. The hind legs were positioned near the rear of the body and formed the main organ of propulsion while swimming. The diets of Polarornithoids at this time consisted of mainly fish and cephalopods, caught on dives beneath the waves. While excellent swimmers, by the Holocene these birds had become so proficient in the water that they are very clumsy on land, moving up the beaches and ice floes by sliding on their bellies in a pinniped-like manner. The Eocene and Oligocene especially were the apex of Polarornithoid diversity, with a range of small to giant forms dwelling along the coasts of Australia, Zealandia, Antarctica and western South America. They inhabited the same ecological space as the Anatofucoids, but don't seem to have competed with them to a large extent, at least not initially. As the Anatofucoids began to grow in size, however, this put pressure on the larger Polarornithoids, in addition to the expansion of derived plotosauroid mosasaurs in the region during the Oligocene. By the end of the period, the giant Polarornithoids had become extinct, leaving only the smaller and more modern Antarctodiptids in their place. These forms continue to thrive to the present day, living as far north as Peru, with a range that encompasses the western coastline of South America, Antarctica, New Zealand and Australia. Occasional errant birds have also been sighted in South Africa and Mauritius. Thanks for watching, everyone. Next week I'll be covering the evolutionary history of tuataras and their extinct relatives. See you again soon. Cheerio.